Joe, let's start by having our audience to understand a little bit about who you are, what you want them to remember about you. So, would you please us the great honor of sharing a little bit about who you are and the work you do, please?
Thank you. My name is Joe Jacobi. I'm an Olympic gold medalist in the sport of whitewater canoe slalom, and I'm a performance coach and an author. And I would say that one of my, my main sort of approach to what I do is that I take the art of surfing waves and I use that to develop a process of deep reflection and meaningful personal transformation. And yeah, I think just incorporating elements of nature and getting outside into a overall point of really setting the compass on your life towards the direction true north. I mentioned I'm an author. I did write a book, but these days I'm also writing a weekly essay, a short weekly essay called Thinking in Waves, where I am transferring my experiences and lessons learned surfing offshore ocean waves on a specially made kayak for doing that called a surf ski. And I transfer that process of surfing waves into an innovative model for clear and creative thinking. So that's kind of what I'm up to. And of course, I have a lot of time on my calendar to get outside and enjoy nature. Ideally with my girlfriend Maria, we love being outside together, whether it's in the snow, on rivers, in the ocean. Yeah, we really enjoy kind of seeing beautiful things outside together.
Beautiful, beautiful. Joe, I'm curious about the thinking in waves. So before we start with the topic of wisdom, let's dive into thinking in waves so that we're not going to get forgetful about that. Okay?
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, the origin of the thinking in waves is that I have a coach for the sport of surf ski. He's an amazing coach and an amazing paddler named Boyan. He's located in the southern Spain, and Maria and I go to visit him once or twice a year. And Boyan is a really interesting character. He has like a very specific process for surfing a wave. It has different steps. And I remember the first time I met him, I kind of challenged him. I said, hey, isn't surfing waves like this creative, artistic expression? Like, dude, I'm surfing a wave. And like, won't a systematic approach to surfing a wave kind of ruin that energy, that vibe? And he said, no. He said quite the opposite. The idea of having the steps to surfing a wave is to kind of let you know where you are in the process. And if you fall off the wave, you'll know how to kind of get back on, by redoing the steps again. And so at that moment, I kind of had this personal revelation that I think inside of us, all of us have like an inner artist and an inner scientist. And maybe we lean one way or the other, but like I think we've got to work towards bringing the two together. And my love of surfing waves does exactly that. And so what I did with Thinking in Waves is I took this process of surfing waves, I moved things around a little bit and I shortened the steps to 5 steps, but I developed this, what I call the wave surfing progression. And the idea is that, I look at life as like a series of waves. Our relationships, our health, our professional pursuits, creativity. And the idea is like how to ride those waves, the up and downs of those waves, using the steps of the wave surfing progression to ultimately improve your thinking, your mindset around it, and ultimately change behavior and achieve better performance. And so I like to say, ultimately, like, surfing spectacular life waves.
Oh, wow. Joe, you're not only an artist, you are a mix of an artist and a scientist. And that's why when we started that journey of having the 50 amazing mind joining to share the topic about wisdom, and it's so easy to think of you and say, okay, definitely we'll bring Joe in because of the wisdom of he has on, traveling the world and understanding nature, understanding the rivers, the waves, and then how to connect between and that into the living and helping him and the people around him to growth, right? So that is wisdom right there. And let's put the thinking in waves on hold for the time being, and then we'll get back to it at a later time in this conversation. But let's start now onto the main theme of the conversation, wisdom. Okay, so Joe, each of us will have a different definition, understanding about the wisdom in our own dictionary. So we want to know about your definition, how you define wisdom. What is it?
How I define wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I guess it's not one I think about very often, but, I think it's, I wouldn't want to give wisdom like too much definition. It sort of feels like, when you go into a restaurant and for dessert, you get a piece of cake and it has all those layers to it. And, there's different tastes inside the cake and you can't like identify like all the layers, but they all sort of work together to contribute to like a really great taste. And I think wisdom is a little bit like those layers of life experiences and lessons learned as like layers in a cake that all come together to give you information and that ultimately help give you context and perspective and ultimately maybe a little more clarity in how you make choices about how you're evolving in the world, the person you're becoming in the world. And I guess it's not I didn't maybe explain it super well, but I would also say that I wouldn't want to come up with like this short, cheeky, definition of wisdom either, because I think in the end, it's really kind of a mix of a lot of experiences and maybe not all good experiences, but lessons that we needed to learn in life and that contribute to the enjoyment of our path in this life.
Wow. This is the first time out of the 50, all the many conversations we had about wisdom. This is the first time I heard about using cake as a metaphor to define wisdom. So curious, how's cake in your life? How do you like it a lot or what? Oh, just something random.
No. I do. I enjoy. I don't eat a lot, I should say. But listen, I made a big life transition to live in the Spanish state of Catalonia, and I love living here. And food is one of the things that I love most about it. And we eat some really interesting cakes over here. It's a big part of our holidays and festivities and traditions. There's a lot of different kinds of cakes, but I don't eat a lot of it. But I certainly enjoy a good piece of chocolate cake.
Joe, the reason why I ask is because I really admire the people who can make things simpler. Okay, so wisdom is a very big idea, right? And then when some people we have the ability to make from that big concept onto something that people can relatable, like in your situation is a cake. Some other people they will do like a different example, so it helps us to go through the thinking process a lot easier and a lot more relatable into our daily activities, and that is a skill. That skill, I think, need to be transferable from one person who is skillful of it into the next, so that people will be able to make simply things out of the complex in their lives. And there is a saying that simplicity is a most complex things to do also, right? So Joe, how can you build that capacity of visualize something and make it a metaphor or something that it can be easily relatable and think about?
You mean in terms of
For example,
if
in
you could
terms
just
of,
sort of
yes,
simplicity?
yes. So, for example, like when I asked you about wisdom, that you thought of cake, and you use cake as
Yeah,
example to explain things, and it make the audience or in here, which is me, and maybe other people also feel it easier to understand and
for
to
sure.
absorb. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I've never used the cake example before, but I don't think I've ever really been asked about the definition of wisdom either. But I think also I was listening to, how you approach, this idea that, the simple things can be complicated. I would actually, the way I like to sort of talk about simplicity there is that I think things can be very simple but not easy, or and I think that's a place where people really get a little bit confused about simplicity. Simplicity is a really important word to me, and I'm always wondering if there are ways that I can simplify a process or an idea. I think writing is really helpful for me to do that. I mean, I always write these weekly essays, the Thinking in Waves essays, and then I find myself, okay, the first draft is done. What I don't think about what needs to change. I think what needs to be subtracted, like what needs to come out. And what I think another way of saying it, I mean, I think when Da Vinci, was, I'm paraphrasing here, but when Da Vinci was doing the statue of David, I think it was a pope who asked him, like, how did you do this statue? And he said something to the degree of, well, I just removed everything on the stone that wasn't David. And that to me is like my favorite definition of like simplicity. It's like, it's just removing what isn't the essence of the task. It doesn't mean that it's easy, but, and then I think that is where maybe we tend to sort of confuse the complication, is when we sort of confuse simple and easy. But simple can be very challenging, but I just think with it, we sort of see the essence of a person. We see the essence of an idea. We see the essence of a relationship. We see the essence of a community, of a movement, of a business. Yeah, it's not always easy to do, but I think it's a great lens to sort of hold over the things that we look at. And yeah, and I also suppose that, that is maybe a way that simplicity contributes to wisdom as well.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. So when you say that wisdom comes from, life like a waves coming to our life, right? So why is there people that cannot respond to those waves and build the wisdom for themselves? Why are other people be able to do it and do it well, do it early in their lives?
All right, so I want to you. If the question is why aren't people doing better with their waves, I love this question, and I think there are so many things that can go wrong with waves. I think the first thing we got to sort of find some agreement on is that life, energy, so many of the systems of science that we hold to be true about, the three-dimensional world that we live in is based on the fundamentals of waves. There are ups and downs to it. Now, I think if we agree with that, let's sort of use the surfing metaphor. Like there's all these waves that are moving in different directions, and why aren't people having more success? Well, I think people don't understand waves very well. And secondly, or they don't like read the waves very well. And secondly, I think that they misjudge something that I call basic speed, that we call basic speed, which is step one of the wave surfing progression that I write about in Thinking in Waves. This comes before purpose. This comes before surfing the wave itself. Your basic speed, in order to catch a wave, you have to have like a certain amount of like all day, everyday speed. And if the wave is moving faster than you, it doesn't matter how big the wave is, how beautiful it looks. You cannot surf the wave unless your speed aligns with that wave. And what's happening in the world today is everything looks like a great wave. So many people want to surf every great wave. And number one, they don't have the basic speed, so they still got to do work on themselves to improve their basic speed. And number two, you've got to choose waves that align with where you are. You might not be surfing the biggest, most powerful waves right now, but one of the expressions we have in surf ski is the little waves lead to the big waves. Go find little waves. They're much easier to surf. They're much easier to catch. So if your question is, why are people missing waves or not surfing them well? There are a lot of answers to it, but the first two that come to mind is that their basic speed is not good enough to catch the waves they want to surf. And secondly, they're choosing waves that are not for them. They don't know why they're on it. They haven't specified a direction. They haven't demonstrated a skill. Oh, Elon Musk does this, or Bill Gates does that, or Oprah Winfrey does this. Yeah, that's what they do, but we are not them. We are ourselves. So we got to find the right waves to surf for us. But if you do, here's the thing, if you find the right waves, the whole reason for getting better at surfing waves in life is that waves yield free energy. And all of us could use more free energy in our life. That's exactly what a wave does. It gives you free energy towards the pursuits that matter to you most.
Wow, Joe. I got goosebumps in my skin when you talk about the read the and you understand the waves and then understand our basic speed, and those seems to be fundamentally basic, right? And so many people don't get it. So many people don't get it. They want to chase the big waves, like you say, and they miscalculate, misunderstood about their ability and their speed. We means their strength, so that they keep chasing something that unattainable, unachievable, unsuccessful. The chance for them to be successful at those waves are small. And because of that, they're heading against the current, and they're not letting the waves to give them the free energies to go into that direction a lot easier. So whoever got lucky to go into to go into the finish line, they get there not happy. They get there exhausting, and they get there. And when they look back, nobody with them. So the whole notion of understanding,
if they get there at all.
Yeah, if they get it at all, right?
It's really funny, as I just finished speaking about that, I was thinking about your grandfather. And if you actually look at his life, like you mentioned, he worked every day. You know what happened when he worked every day was that he developed a better level of basic speed than a lot of other people around him. And by having a greater capacity for, basic speed, and by the way, basic speed is not sprinting, it's not grinding, it's kind of your all day, everyday pacing. And your grandfather working on that at a young age So when he started to think about what his purpose in life was going to be and what kind of waves that he was going to surf, he had a much, much better starting point for, yielding, acquiring and working with the free energy of the wave, just based off that. That is why, in the wave surfing progression, we have all these other things that come after basic speed. But like, look at the life of your grandfather. Like, he's with us today. He's in a good state, and he's living a life of purpose. But what really allowed him to do all of that? It was a great basic speed, and he would never tell you that it happened by eating the right diet or doing sets of intermittent fasting. He wouldn't tell you that at all. No, show up every day and do the work, and start to work like that. You come up with better ideas. You come up with better focus about where you want to go in life. I'm just sitting here thinking, your grandfather is the perfect symbol of the wave surfing progression. He's got basic speed down to a T at 95 years old.
Wow. Joe, because there's notion called instant gratification. So people want to see things immediately, or they want to see the results for the efforts they put down and stuff like that. So they don't have the patience much anymore. So building the basic speed, like you say, it's you're doing the basic things and show off and keep doing what you do and build the capacity will rise over time. And that needs patience, and that piece is missing. So what can we do to learn from you to help us to regain our ability to be patient, to be focused, and pay more attention to what is important in our lives?
So it's a great question, and I think sort of what's underpinning your question is, really consistency, like showing up to do the work consistently day in and day out. And I just actually wrote about this in Thinking in Waves yesterday, that, I think one of the real key issues of consistency is the willingness to embrace all conditions. Meaning, I think a lot of times we can set an idea or a goal under the perfect scenario. I'm going to go out for a walk every day, and if it's sunny and nice outside, I go for a walk. But if it's rainy or windy or cold or snowy, and maybe I'll just stay in bed and not go for the walk. But the thing is that I think that when if you embrace all conditions, that if you just get outside and walk, maybe there's in times of conflict, in times of change, in times of, the conditions are not perfect. Sometimes you get out and you go for your walk and you learn a lot more from the steps you take. You get better at taking those steps, and it adds something more to the overall pursuit of what you're doing. And I think, you've got to be curious, but you've also got to think about what it means to embrace all conditions. Meaning, I think when if you just set up to perform when the conditions are perfect, as soon as the conditions are not perfect, you don't have a plan and you don't really know what to do. I don't think that you have to, prepare for the worst day out. I just think prepare for a range of scenarios, a range of possibilities without being too specific, and to get out and go for a walk, it doesn't mean you have to walk for 2 hours in the rain, but what? Get outside and feel the rain on your face a little bit. You can come in 15 minutes and take a shower and drink some tea and warm up, but that walk in the rain is as good for you as a walk on a warm, sunny day. And you're going to see things differently. You're going to notice things differently. And you're going to build up a unique kind of resilience as well, like the consistency that shows up. And I think that's how you get more consistent. That's how, basic speed is built over time. And that's what underpins this idea of patience.
And also, it helps you to understand the waves, right? The right kind of waves that is for you, so that you can borrow, you can leverage, and then you can use the free
I
wave
love that.
strength. Yes, right. Right. So, Joe, in the world of so many
I,
choices, yeah, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Go
Yeah, in the
ahead. You
world
you
of
you
so
were
many.
you were saying something.
No, I was just going to say, I think that, as you mentioned, as you beautifully brought the wave analogy into the basic speed, the third of the 5 steps in the wave surfing progression is called wave selection. And my coach has a beautiful saying about surfing waves in life, or really surfing waves on the water. I just applied it to life. And he says, you will, your best rides on the wave will not be judged by the waves you catch. They'll be judged by the waves you let pass you by, essentially the waves you choose not to ride. And so essentially this third step of wave selection, and this is what basic speed also helps you do, it not only helps you figure out which waves are for you, but it helps you to see which waves are not for you. Again, I bring this back to your grandfather after all these years. Yeah, I think he has a pretty good idea of what he did, but I think he could easily tell us that he has as strong an emotion, as strong a feeling about what he chose not to do. The waves he chose not to surf. That would have changed his life in a dramatically different wave, in a different way. And I think if you asked him about that, he could speak as clearly about the waves he chose not to surf as the waves he chose to surf. And basic speed helped put him in a better position to figure out, what waves, where we gain free energy from that. So I just wanted to share that piece as well. As you really, I love the way you brought the waves into the conversation of about patience and consistency.
Beautiful. And Joe, thanks a lot for saying kind words about my grandfather. I'll tell him tomorrow morning when I meet him.
I love it. I love it.
I will tell him there's a gold medalist friend that tell his admirations about my grandfather, and I'll tell you how he respond to it. Okay, I'll show you the photo.
I look forward. That would be amazing. That would be awesome.
Yes. So, which leads to the next question is about capacity, Joe. Because one thing is I'm afraid is that if we catch the wave is bigger than our ability, all right, and well our speed is not yet getting there, so we fail, all right. That is for sure. But if we undermine our capacity, we underdo our under build our speed, and then we can catch bigger wave. We can go for the gold medal like you, but then we only aim and going for the 5th and the 6th, or like next year plan, but not this year things. So where can we build the mentality and find the mentality that can leverage the really, really potential inside of us and let that wisdom lead the way, so that we can build the better speed, the speed that we really, really, really can do, and can be able to catch the wave that we can really, 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 like leverage to help us to get to the bigger wave faster and big and more successful.
So it's such a great question. And, I think there's sort of 2 ways to talk about it. I think there's a lot of technique, for really surfing the waves that we're on right now. But I think that you're actually alluding to something, again, that really even comes in between the waves and really our strategy for waves. And I think it falls under the area of basic speed. But at the core of your question is this idea that I believe we have to manage energy over time. So many people, so many young people, especially young people, but really a lot of people in the world, they think to themselves, if I just had more time, our time is our greatest, currency. Like we only have a certain amount of time. I understand all the things about time, but I think there's one of the big elements about time. Time does not ensure that you have the capacity to do anything. I could help you find 2 hours free in your day to do something else, but your question is actually about capacity. And that doesn't, just because you have more time is just a construct to manage energy. So really at the root of your question is that I think we're better off managing energy than managing time. And I think that means that not just how we expend energy, but how we recover energy. And when we get into recovery, now we're talking about, rest, replenishment, and not just sleep, but really what does rest and recovery look like between Zoom calls? If you just have like a minute, which there are things you can do. What does rest and recovery and replenishment look like if you have 5 minutes, 15 minutes, a real lunch break? What does that look like by a cutting off a work time at the end of the day, on weekends, a long weekend, a week-long vacation? Sometimes I do coaching calls with my clients where we're just having a call about how to make the most of a vacation, how to go on a vacation. And so all of this is that I think when you look at some of the great performers in the world, let's use a couple of Olympians like Michael Phelps, for example, who's kind of presumed to be, maybe the greatest Olympian of all time, an amazing swimmer. And we all like to sort of think, oh, Michael Phelps, he swam faster than everyone else in the world. True, very true. But what really got him to the point of becoming the fastest swimmer in the world? The real thing about Michael Phelps is that he recovered more efficiently than his competitors did. And when you recover more efficiently, you have the ability to work at a better, higher intensity and more frequently than your competitors do. So whether Michael Phelps was doing, in the middle of a workout, if the coach gave all the athletes 10 seconds to rest in between sets, Phelps could recover better in those 10 seconds than his competitors could, which means when he left that rest and recovery period of 10 seconds, he could swim at a higher intensity than everyone else. So he was getting better faster than everyone else. And when the workout was done, he knew how to go into rest and recovery mode better than his competitors do. And so if the question is really about capacity, the idea is to manage energy, not time. And secondly, if you're going to get better at managing energy, manage rest and recovery. Let's come back to the waves real quick. If a wave goes up, and we love to think about pushing the up side of our wave higher up, because if the high side of our wave goes higher up, we perform better, we make more money, we do better at what we do. But you know what people don't think about is reducing the drops in their waves, reducing the fall in their waves. And I always say, if you can reduce the fall of your waves and the frequency of those falls, your performance will improve over time. Science cannot contradict that fact. If you can reduce the fall and the frequency of your waves, your performance will improve. That is what rest and recovery does. It's exactly what it does. It's exactly why Phelps, went on to become like best Olympian of all time. That's why he was able to swim more intensely with better technique, with better strategy than his competitors. It's because, he had more, he managed his energy better.
Wow. Joe, that leads me to one of the training that I facilitated back a few years ago in Singapore. So we had a top talent of sales team around the world for a company coming to Singapore for training, and and everybody said that they are the best of the best in the field, right? So we draw a mountain when they're in the top of the mountain, so they're the best there. And they say, okay, what's next of the best? So it's a steep valley for them to falling down. If they keep taking another, step forward, they will fall because they're already at the highest of the mountain already. There's no way for them to continue to rise. So with that being said, Joe, how can we build and use the wisdom in life so that we can get better, get better every day instead of, like going to top of the wave and then, falling down with the gravity when the gravity pull the wave down.
I think one of the really important parts of your question is that, all of us have an inner voice. Mm-hmm. We all have a personal narrative also that we tell ourselves. And I think I really want to focus on the inner voice. If the stories and the metaphors that you're using are not correct, I think it puts your inner voice in a position of struggle. Meaning, I see this mountain metaphor used all the time in business, and I think people get a lot of things wrong about the idea of what really happens on mountains. What really happens on Everest. This idea we just go to the top of the mountain and we win. That is so not true. I think going up mountains is helpful. I think they have their place. But I think we misunderstand what really happens and what the tops of mountains are really like. I always say that the problem with the top of the mountain, there's no space up there. There's nowhere else to go up from, and there's very little oxygen. So you go up there, you do what you're supposed to do on the top of the mountain, and you come back down. And coming back down mountains are not easy. And I think that if you're going to use mountains as metaphors, you can look at the way people climb Mount Everest. No one just goes straight up the mountain. They go up to these different camps along the way. They go up and then they come back down. They go up and they come back down. They're acclimating all the time. And when they eventually start to work their way up, and it takes it takes a few weeks to go up and acclimate at the different, camps and the different elevations, they finally get to the top. And then we've also heard these really tragic stories of people who died coming back down the mountain. And, I just think that if we have an inner voice, we ought to be really challenging the metaphors and the stories that we're listening to, especially if we have goals in business to perform better for ourselves as leaders or with our teams, or in our entrepreneurial pursuits, whatever that looks like. I think that if you get the metaphor wrong, it does damage to your inner voice, because your inner voice starts to tell you things like, oh, we got to be on top of the mountain. We got to keep going to the top of the mountain. And it's just not true, and it's not healthy either. Mm-hmm. And so I just am really, I know everyone has these businesses about leadership development and coaching, and I think everyone has an opportunity and a space to help. But I think as the consumers of that information, that we need to be more discerning, essentially employ that step 3 of the wave surfing progression, wave selection. Not every wave is meant for us. We got to let some waves pass us by. And if people are bringing us the wrong story, or they're not really presenting the story in a correct way, we have to understand that that's going to move us further away from where we want to be if we buy into the wrong story and the wrong metaphor.
So it may go back to the principle you said, understanding the way that fits for you also, right? So not every way is for you.
Yeah.
So yeah. Joe, one of the yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I did talk about step 1 being basic speed and step 3 being wave selection. I think it's a really good time to actually mention step 2 of the wave surfing progression, which is direction. I think we can look in the world, around the world, like on LinkedIn, on social media, or even in real business. I think people are surfing waves, but I don't think they have an idea of what direction they want to go. And, or they have an idea of what direction they want to go, but they're surfing waves that are taking them further away from where they want to be. So if, like, figuratively, if I want to go north and end up at the lighthouse, if I catch waves that are taking me to the west out into the middle of the ocean, those waves are going to come to an end at some point, and I'm going to find myself further away from where I want to be. And this is why, like, I think basic speed comes first. You know, you got to develop I don't think that making a plan for your life works very well when you just do it from like a low point in your life. I think if you just get a little bit of basic speed going in your life, a little bit of movement. We hear so many people say, oh, I think better when I go for a walk. I think better when I go for a bike ride. I think better when I spend time in nature. Yeah, because, you know, you're moving a little bit. You have a little bit of like your all day, everyday speed. Then you set step 2 is you set your direction. And then in step 3, you really start to pick which waves are not your waves, and you stay away from those waves. And this is how the first 3 steps of the wave surfing progression really start to lead into how you surf life waves, how you surf business waves. And, you know, look, I think about this stuff all the time, like you can tell, like I think about this like crazy, but I think it's a really good metaphor, and I'm open to people challenging it. But I'll tell you this, I mean, I see people pitch this idea of like, we're here and we need to be on top of the mountain. Really? Are you sure that's where we need to be? Like, I'm not saying we don't need to go there, but like to think like that's going to make us happy, and that, like, no, you know, that's not what peak performance is. It doesn't look like that at all. Mm-hmm. And, you know, certainly not in sport, you know, and not the high performers that I work with. So, yeah, I think this is how you sort of learn that sense of discernment and where purpose comes into the game and when to start working on your purpose.
Before I ask the next questions, because you mentioned the 3 steps already. Why don't you help us to mention the next 2 so we can complete the 5 steps in the Invest in the Wave?
Yeah. So step 4 is just the most kind of basic and obvious. It's once you've done the first 3, now there's all these techniques. Step 4 is surf the wave. That's it. It's surf the wave. And at the root of surfing the wave, there are so many things to learn about the waves of life and the waves of business, just like the waves in the sea. But the one thing that I will say is that I think the word equilibrium is really helpful here. And I think a lot of people misunderstand the word equilibrium. It's not balance, so to speak. Equilibrium is positioning between 2 opposing forces. And on a wave, that means you have gravity on one side and you have friction on the other. And it's not to say that gravity or friction is good or bad. You are looking for a point between those 2 things. If your speed on the wave, if you're moving too fast on the wave, you need some friction. You need to slow yourself down on the wave a little bit to harness that free energy. If you are falling off the wave, you need more gravity. You need less friction. And so we're always balancing, wrestling between that. So equilibrium is like the place to be on the wave. Mm-hmm. And we could speak for another hour on equilibrium, but I just want to say that anchors step 4, surf the wave. In step 5, you're going to love this. You have to know about my coach, Boyan. He's from Bulgaria, but lives in southern Spain. He's a big guy. And this is it from his progression as well. The last one is a sense of like celebration. We call it yeehaw. And
Yeehaw!
the idea, and he always says, like, when he taught it to me, he said, you've got to be out on a wave when you are doing it right, when you're capturing the free energy and you're surfing the wave right. Don't forget to yell yeehaw. And then he looks at me like you're from Texas. And it just made me laugh so much, but at the root of it, what he's saying is that we need to celebrate. We need to recognize our success. We need to recognize when we're actually surfing the waves well, so that, we become curious and that we identify with the feeling and we want more of that feeling in our life. And so step 5 is just simply yeehaw. And so that's the wave surfing progression. You have basic speed, direction, wave selection, surf the wave, and yeehaw.
Yeah, wow. So it reminds us of celebrating along the way of what we do, right, Joe? Especially when we really manage the big wave in our life also and the small waves. So Joe, one word that you mentioned a lot in this conversation, and I'm not sure if you understand aware of that, and that word is think. Think. And my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think, because we believe that is the basics of the transformation where it starts, right? So if we can think well, then we can, come up with better idea and can execute it and get a better result. So assumingly, okay? So for every conversation that we've been having, we always ask this question, and we want to ask you too. So, how have you been growing your ability to think?
Well, it's such a great question. And I mean, it really anchors what I write about, which is called Thinking in Waves. And I think at the root of Thinking in Waves is that, to me, waves, because they have these peaks and troughs, we have these up and down moments in life, and we're still going to have thoughts in all of those situations. So at the root of the question that you and your wife are asking, here, I think it's it's kindness to self. Like, I think you got to find that way to be more kind to yourself, to know that we're going to have ups and downs in our lives. We're never going to get thoughts perfectly, but it is something that we can improve upon. And to me, the idea of having this wave surfing progression is that it helps bring us, it helps us to honor the idea that the conditions change. We have to adjust. We have to have some agility there in order to think better. But that also comes with a lot of self-kindness. Like, when you're thinking well, or the thoughts are going well, I mean, are you stopping to say, hey, I'm thinking pretty well? The answer is probably not, but maybe it's worth taking that pause to say, hey, you know what? I do notice my thoughts are better at the moment, and just notice that. Don't say that it's going to stay like this forever. It's going to change. And similarly, when things are not going well, it does not mean that you cannot arrive at good choices and good decisions. But one thing that I think is so important here is that if you're on the downside of a wave, don't pretend like you're on the upside of the wave. Just acknowledge where you are in the moment and just say, great, I'm going to make choices based on where I am and how I am. And that way, that is a sense of being more compassionate and more kind to yourself.
Wow, Joe. It's a beautiful conversation about wisdom and bringing the thinking in wave to this conversation in a very practical way. At the same time, is also a abstract way. It's very beautifully meshed in between. Okay. Last question. And before I ask the last question, I want to ask you this first. How old were you when you first meet your coach, Boyan?
I just met Boyan about a little over 2 years ago.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, so I know we're on video right now. You can see these paddles behind me. The shorter paddles are the canoe paddles that Maria and I use in the river. But the long paddles, the kayak paddles, are what Maria and I use when we paddle in the ocean and paddle in the sea. And so paddling in the sea is pretty new to me. I'm not Olympic champion or the best in the world at surfing waves. I'm just a very enthusiastic student of it. And I love working with Boyan, most amazing coach that I've worked with. And as you can see, yes, I learned the art of surfing waves from Boyan, but you can see I've taken this much, much further than surfing waves. I've really carried it into how I live my life, how I make choices, and how I sort of support other people in coaching collaborations as well.
Wow. I want to bring you to the first moment that you met him. And earlier in this conversation, you said that when he shared his wisdom, then you had some disagreement with his sharing his coaching principle,
That's
right?
right.
And it seems like
Yes.
in 2 years, things have changed. So if you bring you now to have that same conversation with him 2 years ago when you must first met him, and if you guys redo the conversation, what change will you say to him?
Well, actually, the way that conversation happened, I actually changed my opinion pretty quickly
Mm,
after that. I mean, again, I just had this idea of what I thought surfing a wave was. And Boyan opened my mind to what surfing a wave can be. And basically, what a good coach does is that he sees your blind spot, he sees what you're not seeing. So, and by the way, I mentioned inner artists and inner scientists. Most people don't walk around this earth as like 50-50 in that. Everyone has it. I walk around leaning heavier to the inner artist than the inner scientist. But Boyan just helps me to sort of see that there's a place for science, there's a place for analysis, there's a place for methodology to the art. And there's a lot of artists, there's a lot of scientists in the world that are just so rigid in their structures and in their formulas and in their methods that they miss out on the beauty of creativity. And so we all sort of have these places where we can improve. But to your question, Boyan just very quickly picked up on a blind spot and he went there and he helped me to see it. And that's what a good coach does. And
mm,
that's why I was able to take something that was about literally surfing a wave on a surf ski kayak and convert that into something much bigger than surfing a wave on that. But at the same time, to go back to simplicity and complexity, it's just as simple as surfing a wave also. Like that's really what I love doing. I mean, if I that is like my blissful place, is to be as close to equilibrium on the face of a wave as I can be. And I know that the more time that I spend doing that, the better that I show up in this world for the things that are most important to me. They're the things that that improve my health, they improve my relationships, they improve my creativity, and they improve my coaching practice. And so, yeah, all I have to do is think about, putting myself in the best position to find those positions of equilibrium, between two opposing forces and, either apply friction or apply gravity. And that's all I do in my life.
alrighty. And you mentioned the last question, and this is also a very important one. I want you to have us to answer. So, Joe, you said that you only meet with Boyan once a while, okay? So it means that
Yep.
inside of your thinking, your daily activity, you have that invisible Boyan inside of you. So every time that you make a decision between the artist side or the scientist side, you have
Yeah.
some guidance inside of you. So what can we do? What can our audience do to build that mini buoyant inside of their daily lives so that they can have somebody that help them to make better decisions, see the blind spot inside of them before they do something, they say something.
Yeah, it's a great question. Listen, for me, I'll just say, I mean, and this is not the answer for everyone. For me, having a writing practice where I write about waves every week is really helpful for me for processing these ideas. And I mention often in my writing, I link a lot of these ideas to Boyan. A couple of weeks ago, I actually shared a video of Boyan surfing waves to sort of make a point about effort and effortlessness. And I showed a video of Boyan surfing a wave to kind of visually show what that looks like. But I think to anyone in that inner sense is that, listen, for me, the idea of coaching, it's not to have your coach with you all the time. Good coaching is really about helping your clients to perform well independent of you. Like a good coach should be trying to coach themselves out of a job, and essentially. So by not being with Boyan all the time, and I really do enjoy spending time with him, but I think having the space to incorporate those ideas and principles into my life in my own way and just see how I'm doing with that is really good. And if I need, to send a message, to Boyan and ask him, if I ask him a question, I always ask him in terms of surfing. I'm looking for an idea or some feedback on surfing. I don't ask him about a business decision or a life decision or a relationship decision, but I make it about his language, the way our relationship is based, which is on surfing waves. And I've just found a really creative way to share that with more people. So at the end of the day, I think people can ask themselves, if they lean more towards being like an artist or a scientist, and how can they sort of give more parity to their both sides. Like, I think that a good balance of that produces good art and produces good science. And ultimately, if you're doing that, you're going to produce good results.
Wow. It's a wonderful conversation we have today, Joe. Thanks a lot for bringing a lot of insight onto this conversation, and I learned a lot, and I hope that our audience will have a lot to listen to reflect, and to pick something out to do in their life, so they can understand the basic speed for them, can understand the directions, can understand, and which wave for them to catch, right? And then surf the wave, and right. Joe,
this has
yeah.
absolutely been wonderful to revisit this with you, and I love the spirit of your questions. Like, it's as great as ever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Please say hello to your girlfriend and to Boyan when you have a chance to see them today, or Boyan in the near future, please. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Ha.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye, Joe.